Wheel City. Self-care Sunday. Yo. I'm like self-care on Sundays with a day off on Monday. Private jet on the runway, taking off, going one way to the top. Whoa. Who said the sky is the limit when I'm high is my vision? On Facebook Live, going live in a minute. Don't mind me, I'm just minding my business. Breaking news, doing interviews, but it's not about me, I'm doing this for you. Matter of fact, no, I'm doing this for proof that the self-care Sundays and dreams come true. Really do.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Self-Care Sundays podcast. We're excited for this week's guest, Angie Coleman, founder of Reboot America and director of community for Lesbians Who Tech. But before we get started, I wanted to ask your help supporting the podcast via Patreon. Patreon allows supporters of the podcast to donate a monthly amount to help with our costs, including monthly maintenance fees and paying our audio engineer. If you'd like to help us out, please check out patreon.com/selfcaresundayspodcast. That's patreon.com/selfcaresundayspodcast. Thank you for supporting our show in so many ways. It's the generosity of our listeners that helps this information be accessible to so many people in the first place. Let's get started. How are you today, Angie?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. I know I read in the intro that you work with Reboot America and Lesbians Who Tech. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about your work just to lay the groundwork for our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Reboot America back in 2016 after some rampant police violence on Black bodies. And it started off sort of just as actually a weekend hackathon and had progressed to building an entire organization where I connect researchers, academics, technologists, policymakers, and legal experts together to build comprehensive community solutions. And so since launching that one weekend in 2016, we were able to build 12 different prototypes for public safety, as well as 2 public products, one dealing with finances in the Black economy, another one to help people find opportunities to volunteer based on their available time. Outside of Reboot America, I'm also the director of community at Lesbians Who Tech. And that is a global organization of over 40,000 queer technologists in the world who are committed to changing the face of technology. And so what we do is we host events, we promote and highlight, showcase the really great people in our community. We partner with companies to help get underrepresented minorities as well as the LGBT community inside of these tech companies. And so we're really about economic empowerment and finding ways to boost the people who are doing the work, but not always visible.
Yeah, those both sound really interesting and really vital, but also, I imagine, exhausting. So if you could just talk us through a typical day in your life and where self-care plays a role.
That's so good. My typical day is anything but typical. And it can range from sitting behind a screen all day, just answering emails, kind of doing small operation logistical work of cleaning up events and sending out reminders, to running around to different venues, traveling across the world for events, and communicating with teams that are all over and people that are all over. And so it's hard, at first when I started, it was a little difficult to find a balance for self-care because my day changed every single day. And I could never say, okay, at 12 o'clock, I'm always going to go work out. That never happened. Sometimes I'd be excited if I got to eat before 4 p.m. And so I realized that after a couple months of doing that sort of chaotic schedule, I needed to carve out time. And so now what I do in order to prioritize kind of self-care, and for me, the self-care that I'm most interested in right now that helps me the most with my current stress is being physically active, ensuring I have good food to eat, and good food being just the right nutrients that aren't going to weigh me down, and making sure I have quiet time, which as an extrovert, I didn't realize I needed that much quiet time, but I do. I need a lot. And so now I try to carve time in the morning before my day starts so I can go to the gym and prep my food for the day. I also spend some time on the weekends making sure I buy whatever groceries I need and I sort of portion them out so I can grab them and go whenever I need to. And I also take a lot more breaks during the day. I used to always stay at my desk and get food delivered. Now I force myself to go outside and say, I don't really care how busy it is. I'm going to leave. I'm going to get some sunlight. I'll be back in 20 minutes and I'm going to eat, and it's okay because the world is going to keep going. And I can only keep doing my work if I can also sustain myself.
So I think it's super interesting, as you said, and I think it's really challenging to find kind of habits that you keep going back to when your day is not structured. This is something I really struggle with. So how did you was it just a matter of discipline of finding that time every day? Is it looking at your calendar every day and being like, all right, this is the time when I'm going to do it because that's when I can do it on this specific day? How do you make sure that those things happen on a daily basis?
It definitely takes a a lot of willpower and sometimes a little bit of sacrifice. Not a ton, because I'm not into I don't want to shift my entire day in life and what I'm into. But, it started with a pretty ambitious, I'm going to wake up at 5:30 in the morning and work out, because no one's going to bother me at 5:30 in the morning. And by the time I finish and, make breakfast, shower, pack my bag and everything, it'll be, I'll still have 30 minutes or so to relax, and then I can head to work. Then I realized I don't actually really like waking up that early, because I'm not that effective, and my workouts were suffering. They were fine, but I realized that I could have more energy in them if I went later. And so I started waking up a little later, not so much later, but like 6:15, 6:30. And that was a bit better. And I sort of just, like at night, I'd have to say to my partner, as much as I want to stay up and watch this one episode, it's like 10:30 and I have to wake up at 6. And so I'm going to actually go to bed now, because I have a really busy day. And that's hard sometimes, because you want to stay up and like do things. I'm young, and I feel silly sometimes going to bed at like 10 o'clock. But I realized for my health, it's so much better, and I feel so much better in the days. And then similarly, kind of what you were saying, like I do look at my calendar a lot and just sort of pencil in exactly when I can do something. I sort of block it off so work doesn't contact me there during those times. And so I know throughout the day, I can look forward to, okay, at 6 o'clock later, like I'm going for a swim. It's on my calendar. My swim gear is laid out in my room. I set it like this morning because I looked at my calendar and I said, this is what's going on. Yeah. And so the biggest thing really has just been having the willpower and sort of seeing the results of being active and staying healthy and taking care of myself has been a really big motivator.
What's so interesting as we're having this conversation is that, like, I wouldn't feel guilty about blocking off time to have a conversation with, someone at work. I wouldn't feel guilty about blocking off half an hour to like read through something, but I would feel so guilty about blocking off half an hour, even after work hours, even after I've put in a full day of to do something like that. And it's so silly, because it's like, those are the things that keep us going and they're so necessary. And you've put in a full day, but somehow there's still this compulsion to be pulled back to, what you had been doing.
For me, I kind of turn a lot of my downtime into like challenges and things I can learn. And I don't know if maybe that is just how I relax. I like to like complete things, but I want to make sure I'm still doing it in a way that's like, this is just for me, even if I'm just way too naturally competitive and I'm trying to, relax and just say, go for a bike ride. Stop. Don't look at the time. But I'm like, oh, but what if I finish in like 3 minutes faster than I did yesterday? And it's like, it doesn't matter.
I've definitely noticed that. I've noticed that for people who are high achieving and goal oriented, it is easier to kind of take part in these self-care activities if you feel like there is a goal you're working towards. It's certainly been true for myself that like, if I feel like I'm trying to achieve something, it is easier. If it's just like, oh, you're just going to go to a spin class, I'm like, but for what though?
Mm-hmm. Totally. And it's like, it's so silly. Like you think like, where did this mentality come from? And like, well, of course we live in this super hyper productive world and people applaud hard workers. And so you're like, well, let me work hard, even at this thing that's supposed to be relaxing. Like, it's just so funny.
Yeah, I think it's also a thing of like, if you are a person who does that in every part of your life, who like sets goals and seeks to achieve them, I feel like it becomes hard to understand if you're being successful at what you're trying to do, which also doesn't make much sense, because there's no way to be successful at relaxing.
Exactly. You really can't. It's like
you're like, how do I make sure that I'm maximizing my relaxation? And you're like, what is this question?
We could talk even about like social media of like, how do I show people I'm relaxing and how do I show people that I'm living this balanced life? But it's like, it's not a competition, but social media sort of makes it one later of like, well, let me show people that I just worked out so they know. Like, let me like take a selfie of me reading this book, because like, I want people to, I want to share parts of my life. This is a part of my life, but also I low-key just want people to know like, I'm taking care of myself. Like, you should too. And it's really funny of just like the way we live. And we're sort of always, we want the attention, even for like solo activities, and we want to share them with people, even if it's just for us. It's just an interesting dynamic. I think about it a lot.
I do think the kind of need to be on display, I do think is a problem. Like when people feel like I need to show people that I am relaxing correctly or that I am so good at this thing, I think that's when it starts to become a bit of a mess. When people talk about like the first time you meet someone, I'm like, you should have a conversation and not immediately be trying to take a picture. I don't know that people are always really good about that.
Oh, it was funny. I went to a dance party over the weekend and I had so much fun and I really just like let myself have fun. You know, I kept shouting to my friends, it's Sunday forever if we want it to be. Because I just wanted to stay out and have fun. And afterwards, we were all recapping yesterday, just be like, oh, so much fun. And then we noticed no one had photos because we actually were all having just so much fun. Not a single person took out their phone to take a photo in this group of like the 6 of us. And it was just like, it was such an amazing just like realization and feeling of being like, wow, that's so strange. Because like, one, I absolutely wish I had photos. Like we had such a good time and I wanted to like capture us, but it didn't even cross my mind in the moment. I think I was just so checked out of like, this is what actual like, you know, like I'm just here and I'm present and I didn't even think to capture anything.
And I wonder if the kind of constant need to capture the moment or to remember the moment distracts us from experiencing the moment. So yesterday I'm in North Carolina on vacation and we were driving by this beautiful sunset and we stopped. And as we stopped to look at it, I just saw like everyone was looking at the sunset through their phones. They were all taking pictures. And I see that when I go to concerts too, that it's like Beyonce is 2 feet away from you and you're looking at her through a screen because you're trying to take a video of it. And it just is, I don't know if you actually get to enjoy the thing because you're so busy trying to capture it.
Definitely. And it's funny because capturing it, I feel like then turns into like a task or an action of let me capture this, check, like, you know, when you're done, you can sort of check it off. Most people don't stay to enjoy things after they finished it. And so that's interesting. Like I see that too. Like I'll like watch a sunset. People are taking photos and they'll take the photo and then they'll just walk away. It's like, but why don't you just stop and stare at the sun now? Like, I mean, you know, protected with your
yeah. But it's like you've taken the picture, you've checked that box, now experience this moment. I feel like if you're constantly plugged in, there's like this weaning off you have to do. And you're right, at first you do experience this anxiety of like, oh shit, I'm not plugged in. And then after a while you're like, actually this is very nice, and if it's really that urgent, someone will find me.
Absolutely. Yeah. I did a similar thing in that I went on vacation just for like 4 or 5 days and I was debating, do I want to bring my laptop? Like, what if something comes up? I own a lot of stuff at work, you know, and I'm the only one who can do certain things. And so like, what if my team needs me? I don't want to let them down. And then also like, no, I'm on vacation and we're not curing cancer or saving people in the ER. Like it can wait. It can wait. The event invite can go out like 3 days later. It's okay. I don't want to have it. Like, I don't want to be then pressured into working or like, you know, self-pressured into it because it's there. And so I brought my stuff and I never took it out of my bag though. And I just like put my bag in the corner of the room I was staying in and I never once took it out. And I just remember coming home in the airport, I had gotten a text from work and it was, you know, oh, like when you get a chance to do this, you know, no one had texted me all week and like, you know, it's Sunday, I'm flying back. When you get a chance to do this, and I'm thinking I could just pull out my laptop and do it right now. I was like, but I don't have to. And it was kind of one of the first times that I think just having it gone for a while and realizing like, it's not that urgent. You don't have to be connected all the time. Like I can fix this in 3 hours. I can fix it tomorrow morning. Like it's going to be okay. Definitely a little anxiety in the planning stages, but I was very proud of myself for not touching the computer.
Yeah, that's definitely for me something to aspire to. I think it also, in the way you're describing it, it also allows your team to step up, right? Like if you kind of take the opportunity away from members of your team to like actually hold the baton you give to them.
I was just so excited and proud like of my whole team. Like nobody the entire week needed me. The things I had left was in order. They were all in order. People knew what they had to work on. People knew where they could find the info if they didn't have it. And it was a really nice thing. And I noticed that, you know, I appreciate when other leaders in my company step away and really do check out. Because one, I think it sets a nice standard inside of the company and helps shape the culture. And even though at Lesbians Who Tech, we are a very small organization. I think we're up to maybe 7-8 people now. But it's nice that we can feel comfortable stepping away and the team can step up and pick up any pieces that might need support. And they know that those that stay and like, you know, help while others are away know that they also have the chance then to walk away for a little bit, take a break, and we're going to be all there to support them. And I've definitely worked at other organizations that are very tiny and it's hard to take those breaks. It's hard to even step away for a 3-day weekend because, you know, when you're so integral to the team's success, it's just like, well, can I really leave? And are people going to be overwhelmed with the work on their plate when I'm not handling it? And so I get excited that we can sort of find that balance and be able to take breaks because, you know, the work we do is very exhausting sometimes.
So you were talking about your kind of specific habits. You're talking about eating, exercise, going outside, taking the time for quiet. How did you discover that these were habits that were useful to you? What was your journey to finding them?
That's such a good question. So kind of a myriad of a lot of different things. I have really bad depression and anxiety. And so it's something I suffer from, and I'm really strong because of it. And I also have a lot of moments where I don't want to do anything. And it takes a lot of, pushing myself to even get up in the morning. And so, as depression ebbs and flows, I remember being in like a pretty down period and was thinking back to when I was last happy. That sounds really grim, but it wasn't too long ago. And I'm thinking about like, I just felt so good during that period of my life. And I don't know if it's just like I was younger and more carefree or what, but I was thinking about the things that I did during that time. And one of them was working out. And I had not worked out in a really long time, like a few years. I had an injury, and so it deterred me, and then I never wanted to sort of get back up and do it. And so I kind of just started slowly, like, it's not going to be great because I'm out of shape and it's going to hurt a lot for the first 6 to 10 weeks. And I'm going to be really like just lazy and tired and sore. But I just sort of fell back into it, and I've noticed the energy spikes. I've noticed that I sleep a little better. I've noticed that my anxiety feels less noticeable on the day-to-day and in the bigger picture. So that's nice. And then the food part is just such a different story of, I'm probably addicted to food. I'm definitely addicted to sugar. And I know like everyone's addicted to sugar, but like I'm like very addicted to sugar, as in like I used to smoke cigarettes a long time ago, and I quit smoking cigarettes, and quitting cigarettes was so much easier than quitting sugar. And that scares me because I'm like, what are you giving us, world? It's just, I don't know. It's so terrible, sugar. And anyways, I love sweets. I love candy. I love carbs. And while I love eating them and I have the brain, dopamine hits and I'm saying, woo, this is great and it tastes so good, I always feel terrible after. And I was just noticing so many things with my body that didn't feel right, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And so I'd gone through all these trials with doctors of, maybe you're allergic to gluten, maybe you're allergic to dairy, maybe you're, whatever thing they could think of. I trial and error. I cut out dairy for over a year, which meant I gave up like ice cream and so many things that are like my daily treats. I gave up carbs for a bit to see if I gave up gluten, seeing if it was that, and nothing happened. And eventually, just like trial and error, I gave up meat for a few months. Nothing happened. My body felt exactly the same. I gave up candy and sugar, and my body felt, after like 10, 12 days of terrible withdrawals and anger, my body felt like it had never felt before. I felt like my brain was so clear. I didn't have heartburn. I didn't have any like intestinal issues. I just felt like a weird, serene calm, and that I could focus. And, I have ADHD, or so the doctors say. And so I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Now, of course, like I still crave sugar all the time, but I've noticed now that just because of how my body reacts to it, it's a little easier for me to say no. And obviously I have moments of weakness, and I'm also a human being and believe in balance. And so if I want to go get a giant ice cream cone, I'm going to go get one, but I'm not going to eat one every night anymore. And I'm not going to buy gummy worms. And so that was sort of just a trial and error and listening to my body, which I think with age, it was just easier for me to listen to it and say, oh, wow, like this is actually the issue. And this is like the root of so many of your ailments.
So I'm wondering how you think about how your identity helped inform some of these habits. You mentioned having mental health issues, which I think is kind of, I guess people vary on it. I view mental health issues as kind of being kind of part of people's identity, but I wonder how you think about your food habits and other things and how they relate to your identity, and also just access to resources to help you discover alternatives and options and kind of ways to find the things that make you thrive in the world.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. In terms of like my identity, I identify as a Black, queer, bisexual woman. there are a couple different things. So like on the health side, my father, I'm half black, half white. My father is black, and his family has a history of diabetes and heart disease and high blood pressure and a range of illnesses that are basically all, outcomes of a poor lifestyle, whether it be a bad diet or inactivity, just not taking care of yourself. And I know that's because the family he came from did not have those resources to do that. And so growing up, I always had access to really great food. My mother made everything from scratch. We never bought anything that was boxed or frozen. And oddly, I feel like, I lived a very great, resourceful childhood because of that and was kind of raised on good food values. I went to college, that all changed. As I started getting unhealthier and unhealthier in my view, it doesn't really have a size attached to it. It just means I was getting winded walking up the stairs. I would walk a mile and I was sweating. And I was like, to me, that's just not healthy. I need to be able to move my body and take care of myself. And as I started getting unhealthier and unhealthier, that's kind of when I was thinking more about my identity, my race, and how I see myself in the world and how I want to be seen in the world. And that kind of led to a lot of really weird identity issues of I am half black, I am half white, I look very black, but my body type is definitely in the middle there. And I wasn't sure, to me, being very thin is a very white thing. And that's, not a good or a bad thing. It's just, to me, that's generally what I've seen. And I didn't know if I wanted to do that, or I didn't know if I was going against my natural body type and my natural blackness, if I wanted to lose a lot of weight. And so I don't know, kind of a roundabout answer, but now I'm just very comfortable in who I am and what I look like. And I don't really care what anyone is going to say about it. But I mean, I definitely had struggled before about fitting, being the right type of whoever I was for the world and making sure I looked like that and I reflected, I guess, what people were going to expect.
Yeah, I think that is actually something that, not that it's the same, but I do feel like I relate to this idea that it, at least for me, took me so long to get happy and comfortable in my body, that the idea of trying to be healthier and lose weight somehow felt like it was intrinsically tied, or it must be tied to self-hatred or body hatred. And
totally.
I had to figure out, how can I be I'm really happy with how I look, but I need to do these things to be healthier in my body. And it's for health, not for aesthetic or appearance.
Totally. And it's hard. It's hard to this day. I literally had a conversation just the other day with my partner about it. She was saying that she's like, I just want to remind you, you're great how you are. And I was like, I understand that. And I too believe that there are just certain health goals that I would like to reach. But then I also wonder too, going back to the competitive and productive nature that we, or at least that I sort of embody. And I have all these ridiculous goals in terms of my health. I want to be able to maybe do a triathlon again. I did one years ago. I would love to do one again. I want to be able to swim 2 miles straight again. I'm only at a mile right now and I get pretty exhausted. I want to be able to go 2 miles with 0 breaks. I don't understand why I have these weird goals, whatever keeps me going. And as long as I do it with a balance. Yeah, because I definitely went to sleep the other day with a cheeseburger and an ice cream. So
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you a couple more questions about how your work relates to your self-care. So the tech field and STEM in general is perceived as being very white, male dominated. Who or what inspired you to get involved with tech? And I'm wondering, on the show we talk about community care quite a bit. And I'm wondering if Lesbians Who Tech has been kind of a form of community care for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, Lesbians Who Tech has been a form of community care. I found the organization a couple years ago. I had never heard, I think I had heard of it. I had never gone to an event or summit. I had just, recently come out and I saw the event happening in SF and I was like, oh, wow, that's super cool. I really want to go. And the first event I went to, it was just incredible. It was so welcoming and so starkly different than the actual tech industry. And by say actual tech industry, Lesbians Who Tech is the tech industry. And the people in there are legitimately rocket scientists and AI developers and robotics engineers. They are incredible, but those are not the people who get the spotlight when you say tech industry. And like you said, tech industry is predominantly white men or perceived to be white men. Mm-hmm. And so I never thought I would be there. I never thought I would work in tech. I remember I was working at a gym, my first job out of college, doing sales, doing corporate sales for this fancy gym. And I had these friends who were engineers. They had just graduated from WPI. One of them was working at Kayak. The other one was working at HubSpot, and another one I think was at TripAdvisor. And I was like, what? You guys just work at these companies? Like, tell me more. And I learned a ton about them, and they were just so dorky and nerdy. Like, I love them. We'd play Magic the Gathering, just like hang out. And I got really inspired by the cultures of these companies and what I'd hear from my friends. And I really wanted to be a part of it. And so they definitely helped me get there, and definitely inspired me to even consider looking. They were the ones who convinced me, like, you don't need to have a CS degree, or you don't even have to be technical in these companies. They're just regular businesses that also need all this other work and support. And so I had found my way through that, basically just like networking and eventually getting a job in Boston, where I was located at the time, at a really tiny startup. And I know, I won't get into the details because people can always find me online, but I've definitely, I've had my fair share of difficulty in the tech industry because of how homogenous it is and how unwelcome it can be. And so when I found Lesbians Who Tech, I really just thought it was a haven, like the secret. I don't know why people aren't talking about it more. It was incredibly warm and inviting, and people I met that very first summit in 2016, I'm still friends with to this day. And I think there's just something really, really powerful in that. And a lot of us always joke when we show up at summits, we're all so busy. Nobody can like lock down a time to hang out with anyone. Like, we're traveling, we're working, we're just exhausted. And we get to summit and everyone says they just feel so recharged. They feel alive again, that they never want the weekend to end. And when it does, like when Sunday rolls around, people are just like, I don't know how I'm supposed to go back to the real world. The real world being the very straight male dominated world. And, I think that's sort of where Lesbians Who Tech wins right now, of just providing that haven as well as an incredible career and life resource for thousands of people.
That makes so much sense. And I can imagine, especially being in industries, and it's not like the legal profession is, the emblem of diversity, that I do think having those spaces to kind of retreat to and to feel normal and not to have to explain yourself in is really reaffirming. The last question I wanted to ask you is how you've navigated moments of, mansplaining, or places or moments where you've not felt quite so, affirmed at work or in these environments. And how would you suggest our listeners navigate those moments, and kind of what does good self-care look like in those moments?
I definitely don't advise listeners to follow my moves because I am that eye rolling, like side eyeing, tell me more about what I already know type person. Probably not a good move. I've been known to sort of just quit jobs that treat me that way. And I don't mean like a one-off instance. I mean a regular repeating occurrence of, oh, you genuinely do not value me and I do not need to be here. And maybe, I don't know, maybe people should take that route. I kind of wish more people would stand up. I said at my last job, like, I'm tired of being the martyr, as in the person who will always take the stand, say what's wrong, and then walk away if fixes can't be made. But I think that, sort of now and more recently as I've gotten older, I'm just more, I guess I'm less willing to put up with things that don't serve me. And I used to think it was selfish before, and I don't believe that it is. Life is so infinite, and we often pigeonhole ourselves or sort of make ourselves believe that this is it. Wherever you are right now in life, or wherever you work, or whatever you're doing, that this is it, and this is where you are, this is where you'll be, and you have to make it work. Mm-hmm. I mean, the reality is the world is infinite and your life is infinite. You can make it whatever you want. And if something, if people are going to treat you like you're incompetent, you can address them with that information, try to figure out what's going on, why there maybe is miscommunication or a misunderstanding. If it doesn't seem like anything can be resolved, I think you have a hard decision to make. Do you want to stay somewhere where people don't see you as a person who knows things, the basics, or do you want to find somewhere else or start something else? And so, I don't know, my advice is generally just to be honest. At the same time, I'm guilty of playing the game because, as a Black woman in America, you can't just say no. You can't always confront the things you want to confront. And at the end of the day, I know I do have bills. I need to do X, Y, and Z to make the life that I want. And so I'd say early on in my career, I definitely played the game of the smiles, the code switching, the sort of brushing off when people said things that were a little weird and probably shouldn't have been said. but hey, I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to go get this free snack and sit at my desk and just do my work and make sure I get a good review. And as I sort of built up my credibility and who I am and was more and more sought after by different companies, I realized I think it's okay for me to speak a little bit more. I have a little more influence. People respect me. If I say, I've noticed X, Y, and Z, it makes me feel like this. Are you open to talking about it versus being afraid to do that when you're, maybe entry level or it's your first job or you just joined the company and you've only been there a month, but you're noticing things are wrong. I'd say that's probably my advice. I think it's never going to be black and white, and it's always going to depend on circumstances. And at the end of the day, whether it's needing respect, needing money, needing security, I'm always going to advise that people do what it is they need to do for themselves to get what they need. And again, whether that's respect, money, security. There's never going to be a right answer of everybody should just get up and pick it. No, everyone can't. I find myself now is one of my care things when I get frustrated with someone or something that's ongoing that I realize I need to say something about it and I'm fed up to the point of just almost snapping. I actually just write in, whether it's on my notepad, handwriting or on the phone, I just write down what I'm feeling and as if I were saying it to them just to get it off my chest. And then I'm okay, yeah, you definitely can never send this. I'm a big fan of unsent emails and never just stay in my drafts forever. And just sort of to get out your ideas and your thoughts. And then you can go back and clean it up, make it actually polite and professional and refigure out, well, what is the end goal? And what do I think? Do I think this is going to help accomplish that? Or is this just going to be a wedge that is now we can't get over?
So thank you so much for joining us on the show. I feel like that is a great place to stop. I have so enjoyed having you with us today. For our listeners, where can they follow you and stay up with you and all of your work?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Angie Dunno. That's Dunno, all one word. You can find me online, angiecoleman.me, and follow the Lesbians Who Tech social. I do most of it. We're doing a campaign right now to highlight our really cool employees. And so, I'm one of them. I'm on there. And that's at LW Tech on Twitter and Lesbian Tech on Twitter, LW Tech on Instagram. I know my job.
Yeah. I want to close out by offering a special shout out to our patrons on Patreon. Their generosity makes our show possible and are a huge reason why you're hearing this episode today. We're especially grateful for the support of our super contributors, Vicky B, Rainu J, Brady K, Bill S, and Ember Shot. If you'd like to support the show and hear your name at the end of our episodes, please check out patreon.com/Selfcare Sundays podcast. Again, that's patreon.com/Selfcare Sundays podcast. Also give us a follow on Twitter at Selfcare Sundays or on Facebook at Selfcare Sundays. I'd like to thank the person who made our show art, Leo Horowitz, and the amazing artist who made our amazing show music, For Wheel City, on behalf of our producer, Jess Talwar, our communications interns, Kennedy Freeman, and Sophie Gomez, our audio engineer, Kato Zane, and myself. Thank you for listening. We hope to talk to you guys again next week.